Welcome to the Babylon 5 Alliance. My name is Eric Rupp, and I am your host. On today's show, we are going to be talking about the Orville. We're talking about the differences between Seasons 1 and 2 and Season 3, also known as New Horizons. There was definitely a tonal shift between the second and third seasons, a rather large shift. We're going to talk about that and compare what the show was in the first two seasons to what it became when it went to Hulu. Now, when the Orville was first announced, it was pretty much advertised as a Star Trek spoof. The comedy was really accentuated in the ads leading up to the premiere of the show. And while there was a fairly high comedy content in the early episodes of the Orville, the show surprised a lot of people with its dramatic chops. There were some really serious topics they were talking about on those early episodes, even though there was a lot of humor involved as well. It really had a nice balance that worked really well to make the Orville stand out amongst all the other science fiction shows on TV. At that point, most science fiction shows on TV were deadly serious. There was not much humor, not much fun. You had something like Dark Matter, which was both fun and dark at the same time. It had a real nice balance itself. That was a really fun show. Not a lot of humor. There was some, but it was really well done and the show was fun. The Orville really was kind of a standalone. It had that next generation with a sense of humor kind of vibe going on. It was really seriously, the thing that made the Orville work so well were the characters. It was a character-driven show that had characters that behaved like real people. They told jokes. They were smartasses. And here's the key thing that I point out to people. The characters, the crew of the Orville, they were very relaxed and casual with each other. It was not a very formal relationship between the crew members. They were very relaxed, like true co-workers today. So that's a big difference between something like that and a show like Battlestar Galactica or the Star Trek shows where everybody is just so formal and so proper. And it was nice to see people being relaxed and casual. And that's what the Orville really had big time in those first two seasons. And this scene here is a great example of the crew just being really relaxed and casual with each other, even in a crisis situation. Check this out.
All right, I need answers, and I need them now. What the hell is happening on this ship?
Scans show no record of the vortex Commander Grayson encountered, nor were there any anomalous readings in or around sickbay.
That's not good enough. We have clowns, we have bottomless pits, and our chief medical officer has lost her mind.
Wait, what if we all died in that plasma storm, and this is actually some kind of purgatory?
How would we know we were in purgatory? What's purgatory even like?
You ever been married?
No.
It's like that.
Wait, Isaac, what about the plasma storm? Is it possible that it affected us or the ship in some way?
How so, Commander?
I'm not sure. This is gonna sound like I'm talking out of my ass.
Then please try to enunciate.
No, it's a figure... Never mind. Is it possible that the damage to the ship was more than just structural? Could the storm have frayed some boundary between reality and something else? Thoughts, maybe?
Your ass might be onto something.
As you can see there, even in a crisis situation, they're still behaving like real people. They're saying things in a way that isn't formal, it's not proper, it's the way people really talk. And that's really what makes the Orville so cool, is that you've got these people acting like real people. Yeah, a lot of the humor is a little over the top to be funny. You let that go because it's just so well done and because the characters are so great and the actors playing those characters are just fantastic. You got to love this cast. I mean, there's nobody in this cast that didn't belong. Everybody was perfect for their role. It was a really good job of casting by Seth MacFarlane and the producers. They got everybody right, and that's something that has made the Orville so much fun. The actors, too, you can tell they're having a good time. Everybody is having a good time behind the scenes, and it shows up on camera. And, of course, the scripts are fun. And that's the big thing about the first two seasons of The Orville, is that the show is just a lot of fun. They still talked about serious subjects. They still had some serious episodes, but they had fun doing it. When they went to Hulu, the tone of the entire show changed. And it took them 4 episodes to really get the balance right. The first 3 episodes of the 3rd season, also called New Horizons, those episodes were serious and not much fun. The first episode is about Isaac killing himself. Now, he's the android on the ship, and they really do a lot of retconning here, or some mild retconning, probably be a better way of putting it. They've introduced a new character, a new helmsman named Charlie Burke, and she is angry at Isaac because of the Kalon destroying the ship that her girlfriend was in. And she holds it against Isaac, and not everybody, but there are a handful of people who also hold the Kalon invasion of Earth against Isaac. When the whole time that it was happening, they did not blame Isaac. He did not know what the plans for Kalon Primary were. He didn't know that there was going to be an invasion of Earth, and they were going to go to wipe out all the sentient life in the galaxy to prevent happening again what happened on their planet before. There was no way for Isaac to know that. Once he found out, he kept trying to get Primary to change his mind, to change his decision, and he kept trying to save people the whole time, and eventually Isaac sacrificed himself to save everybody on the ship and everybody on Earth. Isaac was a hero, and that's the way everybody looked at him. But then we come into season 3, and all of a sudden, half the people hate Isaac. Wait, what? He was the hero. He sacrificed his life to save everybody. And now people are mad at him because he didn't tell them he was turning in these reports, and that, by the way, Kalon Primary might try to exterminate all sentient life in the galaxy. Well, there was no way for him to know that. And he did not expect that, and he did not support that. So holding that against him was just ridiculous. And that was a plot point that never fully went away in the season, but they did kind of back off on it a little bit. And it made a little more sense later on because they did handle it better. But in the first episode, they did not handle it well. It was over the top. The character of Charlie was completely unlikable, and she was completely unreasonable in not recognizing that Isaac was not just another Kalon, and he was not the one who decided to invade Earth. That wasn't his call. He opposed it, and she didn't recognize that, which made no sense because she's supposed to be super smart. So that was a problem there. And, again, the episode's all about Isaac deciding to kill himself so that he could stop being a divisive person on the crew. Well, okay, that is just this really heavy topic to start off the season, and especially after the previous seasons had been so much fun. The next episode after that, it was kind of a horror movie episode. And then after that, it was a really confusing episode that just wasn't much fun. It just didn't have a lot going for it. So the first 3 episodes really didn't hit the mark. But starting with the 4th episode of the season, the 4th episode of the 3rd season, which was called Gently Falling Rain, everything fell into place. They got the balance right. It was still more serious than the first 2 seasons, but the crew was no longer quite so formal with each other. They were no longer quite so proper. They were a little more relaxed. They were a little more casual. It felt like the Orville again. There weren't as many jokes, but there were more than the previous 3 episodes. And the tone was different. They got a better balance. So that tone pretty much went through the end of the season. And there were a lot of serious episodes in the 3rd season, a lot of stuff that was different from the first 2. And here, let me give you an example of how heavy the topics were, but they managed to get right, starting with this episode. This comes from Gently Falling Rain, and it's a scene where they're talking about what's happening on Krill.
Look at this. Chancellor Corrin gave us limited access to the Krill Informational Network.
The people of the Ewok province have repeatedly shown themselves to be blasphemous degenerates, unworthy of our aid. By assembling in this place, you show yourselves to be as disloyal as they are. You will regret what you do here today.
A few minutes after this, the protesters were gassed with helicine. 11 people died.
My God. This is the guy we want to sign a treaty with.
You know what the real problem with this event is? It never happened. It's completely fictitious. And there are countless other files that show all kinds of scenarios where Chancellor Corrin oppresses his people. There are even some from the other side, designed to discredit Talea, although they're not that different from her actual speeches.
How can you tell the difference?
Sometimes I can't. I asked the Chancellor, and he said they call it influence operations. They have computers generating thousands of these things every second, trying to stoke outrage. Even the angry crowds are phony.
What do you make of it, as far as the election goes?
I don't know.
And the episode just gets more serious from there. But at the same time, there is still a significant amount of fun to be had with the episode. And the other thing about this episode and the whole third season, the production values just went off the charts. Seth MacFarlane really wanted the show to be basically a series of mini movies for the third season. And the average length of the episode was about 65 minutes. I mean, these things were really long. They really were mini movies. I mean, there were B movies made back in the 40s that were this length. So these really are mini movies, and the effects are just phenomenal. Everything on this show was taken up to another level as far as the production. And that was something that really made the show again stand out. But here's the thing, though, that seems to be kind of a hang up on a potential fourth season, as we're looking at basically still trying to figure out, is there going to be a fourth season of the Orville? Part of the snag was that the third season was just so damned expensive. It really cost a ton of money to make. And while the ratings were very good, they did great streaming numbers on Hulu, and even when it went to Disney Plus, the numbers there for repeats basically were really good as well. So it's done well with viewership, but just Disney and Hulu are having a hard time in their own minds justifying that budget. Now, from what I understand, what I've read and heard, Seth MacFarlane is probably willing to scale back on that budget for the next season to get a fourth season made. It's just a matter of who's going to offer him the money to do it. Hulu and Disney, they are apparently non-committal. There's just been nothing concrete yes or no from either one. And it's been a whole year since the third season ended. So it really is hard to figure out what's going on with the Orville going forward. Is there going to be a fourth season or not? We just don't know. Seth MacFarlane's not giving up, although he is really busy. He's got a number of TV shows he's working on, including the new Ted TV series. He's got Scott Grimes, Gordon Malloy from the Orville on that show as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what can happen going forward. And as far as him being busy, too, there is some word coming out. There have been stories coming out. Sidetrack reported it, amongst others, that Seth MacFarlane may not be in the fourth season very much. He may become a recurring character, getting bumped up to Admiral, with Kelly becoming the new captain of the Orville. Yeah, not ideal, but if that's the only way to get it made, I'd be okay with it. Again, Seth MacFarlane, he is the Orville. And Ed Mercer is just a great character, and you'd hate to lose him on a weekly basis. But if he could be on 3 or 4 of the episodes, that would still be okay, because the rest of the cast is fantastic. So if they could get everybody else back, have Ed Mercer back as a recurring character, and then go forward from there, that would be okay if they could get somebody to say, okay, here's the budget we're willing to pay. Here's the amount of money we're willing to spend on the Orville, so that Seth can determine for himself whether or not he can get it done at that budget. I would think that they could get it done with a 25% reduction in the costs. I would think they could still do it. Hell, they could probably do it with a 33% reduction in the cost. Just scale back the length of the episodes, take them back to 50 or 55 minutes, maybe scale back the effects just a little bit. You don't have to have them be a series of mini movies again. The first 2 seasons were fantastic because they were character driven. They weren't effects driven. So that's something, if they got back to focusing on the characters a little bit more, it could still be great, and hopefully it gets done. It's not over yet, folks, but we don't know what's going to happen. Seth doesn't know. He's got a better idea than we do, but nobody is saying anything for sure. They're not saying it's canceled. They're not saying it's going forward. They're just saying they're still working on it. We'll see what happens. That is it for this edition of the Babylon 5 Alliance. I do appreciate you taking the time to listen and watch the video portion, and hopefully you'll be catching the next show when that comes out in the next week or so. And we're going to have a number of topics coming up in the future, including Stargate Atlantis and SG-1, Dark Matter, and even Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and a character that saw a noticeable change in characterization when he went to a spin-off show. Anyway, this is Eric Rupp for the Babylon 5 Alliance. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you on the next show.